You know the old saying that your greatest ability as a goaltender is availability. So today we're going to dive into the key strategies that can help you stay injury-free. In today's episode, we're going to talk about the things that contribute to hip, groin, ankle, knee injuries, even back injuries. And a lot of the underlying causes can be the same. Before we get right into it, not every single injury is preventable. We can't prevent injuries. We can just reduce the risk. Sometimes it's just a mechanical thing. Somebody runs you over, you fall backwards, you tear your MCL.
Is pushed. Now he's in that blue paint. He is pushed into Forsberg.
That's a really common mechanism for that injury. Sometimes it's just your brain and your body don't match up, and that's how a lot of strains happen. But we can always reduce the risk. So that's what we're going to talk about today. When we talk about muscular issues, so let's just use a groin strain as an example. A lot of times that is because you do not have control, that outer range control. You kind of train in this, sort of neutral stance. You stretch your muscles, but you don't strengthen them at length, and you don't develop that vocabulary of movement in all the really awkward ways that a goalie has to work. So if we're just sort of in our middle stance, we're pretty good, but if it gets into a desperation play or a bang-bang play, then that's when you see injuries to soft tissues occur. If we talk about, and I should say specifically muscles, we talk about ligament injuries in the knee, like the MCL, usually, not always, but there's some sort of external force. A lot of times that is another player falling on us when we're in the butterfly and forcing us backwards. But it could also be kind of going into that RVH and using our body weight to lean and just being a little off balance. That can certainly happen. High ankle sprains you see quite a bit, and a lot of it is in the butterfly again. Maybe somebody falling on you, or the RVH is a really tough position because you can almost anchor that boot against the post and then crank on it with your body weight. And what that's doing is it's sort of spinning your ankle joint within that mortise and tendon. So it's spreading your tibia and your fibula, and that's what creates the high ankle sprain. If we're talking about hip bony injuries, FAI is the one that comes to mind, femoroacetabular impingement, and that is a overuse injury. It's repetitive trauma that develops over years, and that's the problem with FAI, is it feels fine until it's not fine, and then you've got really kind of a big problem. So younger goalies disregard half of the stuff all of the stuff I'm going to tell you about now, because they think, oh, my hips don't hurt, I'm fine. But they're getting that cumulative wear and tear over years. It's building up those bony calluses, and finally they're going to run out of room in that joint space and have pain and lose range of motion and not be able to execute on the ice. Let's dive into what we can do to reduce our risk to try and prevent these injuries. The number one thing, and this isn't in order of importance, it's just the number one thing I'm going to share with you, is doing a good dynamic warm-up before each and every ice session. So not just games, because injuries don't just happen in games. They happen in practices as well. So let's prepare your body to do what it needs to do. But also it's a nice opportunity to have almost a spot check to see how your body feels. We keep a fairly consistent off-ice dynamic warm-up. If you need to see one that you can borrow or steal, here you go. I put one together for you guys. But so you get to know, you don't change it every time just on a whim. You do the same thing all the time. So you get to know how your body feels in the different movements. Let's say, for example, I'm doing my down and back groin stretch. I use this same down and back groin stretch every time when I warm up before I go on the ice. So if I get here and I feel like, wow, that's really tight, I know that I need to give that area a little extra attention. Maybe I'm going to do some extra foam rolling, a little extra, maybe some static stretching, and then a little more dynamic stretching. So it lets you get a sense of what's normal for you, and maybe a little, not a red flag, maybe like a yellow flag of, hey, give this a little extra attention before you get out on the ice. The next key ingredient is your strength and conditioning. A lot of you go to the gym and you work out, but you don't actually train in a way that prepares your body to do what it needs to do on the ice. You maybe work on your big muscles, your mirror muscles. You think that adding strength and maybe mass is going to translate onto the ice, but it doesn't. So we need to and it's okay to add strength and to add mass. We're still going to lift heavy. We're still going to get strong, explosive, all those things. But then we have to add in the ingredients that will let us use those attributes on the ice, just like our mobility training. We can't just stretch muscles. We have to teach them to lengthen, to be strong in those lengthened positions, to have control. Same goes with our big prime movers. And then our prime movers can only really work as well as our stabilizers. Our stabilizers are deeper muscles, they're smaller muscles, they sit closer to the joint, and they get completely ignored in most of your off-ice training programs. So we really need to come back and bolster those up before we start making those big explosive muscles, because number one, those stabilizers are what protects you from injury. It's what controls at the joint level. But also number two, if your joint isn't stable, your big muscles can't express all the force that's available, all their capacity. The more stable you are, the higher percentage of your maximum capacity you can use on the ice. Also, if we look at when injuries happen, a lot of times they happen early in a game. That relates to poor off-ice warm-up. But often they also happen at the end of a game, which can relate to fatigue. So how are you conditioning your body? Strength and conditioning. How are you conditioning your body to be able to sustain the demands of goaltending? Is there a muscle that doesn't have enough endurance? Is your cardiovascular system not able to keep up and deliver oxygenated blood to your working muscles? So it's another important element, and just going for a bike ride or a run isn't going to do it. You need to train your energy system to be a goalie just the way you need to train your muscular system to be a goalie. You're not a track sprinter, you're not a long distance jogger. Your conditioning sessions need to reflect that. If you want to look for a daily goalie workout that I put together for you, boom, there you go. The next key element to making yourself injury resistant is your flexibility and mobility, and I alluded to it a little bit earlier, but if we just stretch a muscle to make it long, that actually puts it in a vulnerable position. Our muscles kind of work in a sliding fashion, and they're actually strongest kind of in the middle when they have a good amount of overlap. When we stretch them out to just make them long like that, it's not a very strong position for us. Plus, our brain is very smart. Some of us, it's smarter than others. I'm not saying that myself. I'm saying anyway. Some of you are smarter than others, but it won't let us get into these ranges where we don't have any control. It knows like that is probably a bad idea, like handing the car keys to like your 16-year-old, hand the Porsche keys to the 16-year-old. It's like, that is probably going to end very badly for the Porsche. So your brain will kind of put a governor on it. It's like, yeah, here's the keys to the Porsche. I set it so you can only go 60 kilometers an hour. Have fun. So we can't, that's when you stretch at home, you know, when you stretch in front of the TV and you're like doing the full splits and you're like, I'm the most flexible, I'm Jonathan Quick here in the living room. And then you get on the ice and it's like, okay, now I'm Johnny on the spot. Like I can't do anything. That's because your body, thankfully, is kind of protecting you and not letting you get into those dangerous positions. So that's why we focus more on mobility, which is building strength at length. I've gone over techniques with you using like pails and rails from FRC, controlled articular rotations from FRC, some of the PRI strategies that we use, and just in our strength and conditioning program, we work a lot on eccentric control, strength at length, dynamically controlling those outer range positions. If you want to get a snapshot of, hey, what exercises should I actually do? You can check out this video here where I give you a complete list of exercises that you can work on to improve your hip mobility specifically. Hey there, if you are finding any of this information helpful, if you want to dive a little deeper into other injury prevention strategies or performance enhancement strategies, make sure you hit the like button, and that helps us share this content with other goalies who are motivated to be at their best, regardless of what level they're at right now. Don't forget to subscribe. If you subscribe, hit notifications so you find out about new videos before anyone else. Super appreciate it. Thing that gets way overlooked is recovery and rest. So some of you train hard. Some of you think when you're struggling, the answer is to actually train harder, to just put in more effort, when really what you might need is to tap the brakes. Now, if you're not training hard, then you don't need to tap the brakes, but some of you do. Working harder isn't always the answer. So really look at, am I doing everything I can to maximize the gains from the effort I'm putting in. Am I staying hydrated? Number one, it's so simple, but it's the number one ergogenic aid. So that means performance enhancing aid for athletes is water. So are you staying hydrated? Is your nutrition good 80 or 90% of the time? And are you getting sufficient sleep? If you're not getting those three key elements, then it's kind of like, I always say this, it's like trying to build a house with just like a couple bricks and a 2x4. And it's like, okay, well, I don't have the tools I need to build this temple to goaltending that I want to build. You can all come visit. We'll have a big party. There'll be a hot tub. I don't like hot tubs, but you guys can have the hot tub. It'll be fun. There'll be loud music. And the final element is your gear. If you're still playing in leather pads with leather straps that have horsehair in them, that weigh 70 pounds by the end of the game, that's adding wear and tear to your joints and your muscles. So you might want to consider an upgrade. I give you permission to go. Tell your spouse that Maria said you need new pads. You're welcome. And if you're the spouse, it wasn't my idea. They made me say it. So new pads, lighter. The lighter they are, the easier it is for you to move, but also the less wear and tear on your joints and muscles. Then there are things that you can do to your pads to adjust them so that it's going to take a lot of wear and tear off your knees and hips specifically, such as adjusting the height of the knee stack. I shot a video on this. You can find it here. Looking at your toe ties. Some of you love your skate lace, and that's fine, as long as your skate lace isn't short. If it's short, and you might love the way it feels, but it is going to sort of pull you into more tibial external rotation, put a more load on your ankles. Again, I'm not debating how much you like it or how good it feels to you or whatever. I'm just telling you it's going to put more load on. I like a bungee toe tie. These are pro laces on my, these are my older Warrior pads. On my new Warrior pads, I just use the stock bungee, but I really like that because it has a little bit of give to it, so my foot can move with the pad. Using a sliding polish can help reduce the friction between your pad and the ice. So again, less friction, a little less wear and tear, a little less work for your muscles. Thinking about your skate sharpening, so the sharper your skates are, it's going to give you more bite, but again, more friction, more torque up the chain to your joints. Maybe getting your blades profiled so that, they're moving with you better. It's just a little bit more efficient and fluid. These are all places where we can tweak our equipment. And who doesn't like tweaking equipment? I'd rather you tweak your equipment than tweak your groin. How would that be? So those are some of the key concepts of how you can reduce your risk or prevent injuries. Doing a good off-ice dynamic warm-up. And I've given you links to individual videos for a lot of these areas. So I also put those links in the description below, so it's easy to find. But good dynamic warm-up. Following a proper strength and conditioning program. So following a program that gives you the strength, the power, the agility, the conditioning that you need to perform as a goalie, not as just a regular person who goes to the gym and works out. And if you need help with that's great, but what do I do? I've given you a sample workout below. I also have complete training phases that you can download. Just again, click on the link below to check out all the downloadable programs I have available. The next one is your flexibility and mobility training. There's a difference between the two, and you need to make sure you're training mobility in all those positions so that you not only reduce your risk of injury, but so that you can move the way you need to move on the ice. Then is rest and recovery. Yes, it's very important. There are very simple things you can do to maximize that. And finally, tweaking your gear before you tweak your groin. And I gave you a few strategies, but again, the link to the full video is down below. So some injuries are unavoidable, but you can prevent a lot of injuries from occurring just by preparing yourself to actually be a goalie. The great news is nothing I've shared with you today is just injury prevention. It's all actually about maximizing your performance. So all the things you do, all the things I put in my training programs to reduce your risk of injury, I've set them up so that they're also the ways that they're going to improve your performance on the ice. That is what we call a win-win situation. All right, goalies, that wraps up our little journey into how to keep you injury-free, how to work on your most important ability, which is say it together, Availability. If you learned something new, give me a like. If you have another strategy that you want to share, drop it in the comments below. I love it when our community shares with one another. That's one of my actual favorite things. Plus, if you think a fellow goalie may benefit from this information, then please go ahead and share it. I don't mind. That's okay. And I will see you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. I love you guys.